research says that's the moment where we do the right thing, only when we are called to do it. People don't do the right thing because it's the right thing. They do it because you bust them and you leave them no choice.
So that was just a clip from a speech that Tim Wise made in where was that? In Detroit area last October. The Roundtable for Diversity sponsored his visit here. He's a great writer, and he wrote a book called Colorblind, and this is an excerpt from his lecture about his new book. It's a message that a lot of us don't really think about that side. We always think about trying to accept everybody as equal and we're not different and try to ignore race and all that, but it really is important to pay attention to people's race and color so that we can address the fact that some people are being treated different because of their color. And this is part of the program we're having this evening, and I just wanted to give you that little clip of his. Now we'll start the program, and I want to formally welcome everybody here. Thank you very much for coming to this special event where we're addressing a very serious subject. We're going to introduce the panel to you in a moment. First, I want to say a few opening remarks. We're at a teach-in. This is a learning experience. All ideas are welcome. This is open discussion. We're going to hear from very expert advice from many professionals in the business and the work in the field, activists. We're going to hear from local victims of racial profiling. We're going to hear from many different types of people. We're the NAACP, and for those of you who don't know our group that well, it's not a social club. It's a group that really deals with the fight for justice and equality. And right now, this weekend in Detroit, the Detroit NAACP is having a massive dinner. I don't know if you're familiar with the Freedom Fund dinner, but it's the largest sit-down dinner in America. I think 10,000 to 20,000 people sit down and have dinner, and they have 4 days. It's just an amazing event. I'm sure some of you have attended that. And there's several other events that the NAACP is putting on this weekend. As a matter of fact, tomorrow afternoon is a forum on hate, racism. I think the flyers on the table back there downtown from 2 to 4. So please check out that. And there's also, we have the Hamtramck NAACP meets once a month, every first Saturday of the month at noon, and we're meeting at the Hamtramck Public Library. I think that would be next Saturday, not this Saturday. So we need members, and it's not a rich group. Our group is very poor in Hamtramck, and we need people to help who want to help fight discrimination and racial profiling, and certainly keep it safe for everybody who lives in Hamtramck and around here. So if you can work with us, we appreciate it. We have membership forms over there. If you consider being a member of the NAACP, we would love to have you join us, because it's the people who are members who form the activities. And I'm just the vice president, and I wanted to put on this sort of event, so our group decided we're going to put this on and do it whether anybody shows up or not. So we're glad that you showed up. We appreciate it. And we certainly thank our panelists, who we have a very distinguished panel coming up. And the purpose of this event is to actually fight this stereotyping and to fight racism and discrimination, Islamophobia, homophobia, fear-mongering. We're going to learn about other cultures, hopefully, here. You know, the whole idea of walk a mile in my shoes, and more that you can actually live and communicate and participate in other people's communities and cultures is better for all of us to work together. We're going to learn about the House Bill 4305 this evening, which is a law very similar to the one that was passed in Arizona. And we're going to learn about the realities on the ground here in Detroit and Hamtramck and how we can deal with these issues. There was a forum in Hamtramck Tuesday night at the library presented by WDET and Model D. Some of you attended that event. It was very informative, and a couple of our panelists were actually there, and it set the tone for trying to address the issues of immigration in Detroit and the economy of Detroit, hoping that we can entice immigrants to move to this area. We need more people moving here to help the economy, for sure. So what this is an event to discuss, to learn, and then it's also a call to action. We hope by the end of this event we'll come up with some ideas on what we can do to help address these concerns. We have questions about what rights do immigrants have. We have questions about who is illegal. Is illegal a term we should use about human beings? Does a person's skin color affect their lives in America? Is there still racism in America? Is there racial profiling? These are all issues that are very important to deal with the immigration issue. Immigrants come to this country, and some of them who are people of color are discriminated against when they get here. Some of them come here and discriminate against other groups. So I mean, it's part of our culture, and we have to find a way to deal with it the rest of it. I'd like to, before we start the panel, I'd like to thank one more time the people who helped put this on, certainly the NAACP members who I introduced earlier, we thank them. And I think Kahn Kamal is now in the room. Let's stand up, Kahn, please. He helped us also. And Ms. Bahor, I announced you to and Saiful Islam, are you here? Okay, he's from the mosque here, and we're very grateful that they let us use this facility. This is a beautiful, rich history building, and perhaps some of you may feel the history in the walls here. This is an old gymnasium school. I think it was a Catholic school originally, and there's a basket net, and it's like an auditorium and everything, so it's the way they used to build these gyms back in the old days. It feels good. We appreciate them letting us use it. The imam here is Imam Latif. And we also have help from Gamal Alturki from the Yemen community. So let's welcome Gamal Alturki. And Gamal, if you could join us, we're going to ask you to come up and sit at the head table here with us as we introduce the panelists. So come on up and join us at this table.
Thanks.
Now, as I said earlier, also we have a language barrier, which is nothing to be dismissed easily, because some people who have trouble speaking English or have a little difficulty to understand what they're saying, sometimes you understand that they know 3 or 4 languages, and I only know one myself, and I'm lucky if I know that one pretty well. So when a person doesn't speak English real well, you have to respect the fact that they're learning another language and that they know their native tongue very well, I'm sure. So hopefully we can understand each other today, and we respect everybody who comes in here and talks, so please make it a community thing. This is going to be involvement for everybody. Now I would like to explain what the program is going to be. We're going to have 4 panelists join us here, and we're going to ask them each to speak for about 5 to 10 minutes apiece about this specific issue. And then we're going to ask them to spend 10, 20 minutes conversing among themselves back and forth to see if they have questions for each other among the panel up here. And then we're going to open it up to the room. And we're going to ask you all to join in and to ask questions, to make comments. And we're not going to cut you off if you want to have a conversation with anybody up here. That means you can talk back and forth within a time period. Just feel comfortable as far as getting your question answered or whatever you want to say. Of course, we won't let you just talk on and on and on for 10 and 15 minutes. We'll try to be fair to everybody, just like normal conversation. So let's see. I'd like to introduce to you our first panelist, who is, all these panelists are very active around these issues, and you see them everywhere, and we're very excited to have with us Ryan Bates from Alliance for Immigrants' Rights. Let's welcome Ryan Bates. He's coming up. He's the director of CAIR, and they specifically deal, and he knows very well about the House bill that's trying to be passed about immigrants' rights.
Mind if I distribute the handout?
Yes, feel free to hand them out while I'm introducing the rest of the panel. And I think we'll have all the panelists come up at one time here, and then we'll ask them to speak one at a time. So the next panelist is Dawud Walid. Dawud Walid, let's welcome him. He's the director of CAIR, which put on that little video piece there, by the way, and Council on American Islamic Relations. And Dawud is another person you see everywhere. He's working endlessly, tirelessly on these issues. Actually, he's on the front page of the Arab American newspaper right there, if you want to see, right, with a whole group of people. Next we have a gentleman who I'm just enthralled with. He's one of the great intellectuals in the area here. He's a professor at Wayne State University. He teaches in the, oh boy, he's going to have to tell me, the Department of Near Eastern and Asian Studies. A great lecturer, a world traveler. He's interviewed on CNN, BBC. He travels all around the world. He's considered an expert on many issues, and we're thrilled to have him join us here this evening. Let's welcome our friend Saaed Kahn. Saaed. And to complete our panel, we're very thrilled to have an old friend of ours, certainly an activist in the Palestinian community. And he's an attorney who knows about immigration. He's an immigration attorney. And he's with Access right now, but he's also with the ACLU. And we're thrilled to have Noel with us. Let's welcome Noel Saleh. Now, you notice that we have all men up here, and I mean, we try to get some women up here. I mean, we want equal time here, and we're very disappointed that our panelist, Seema Ahmad, could not make it today. She had a call this morning and couldn't be here, but she did send us a letter, which I will read to you in a moment. Also, Yvonne White from the NAACP was going to be joining us today and couldn't appear either. So there's a lot of people that I'm sure we would all like to hear from, but we're lucky to have enough time to hear from these folks that are joining us, and we're grateful for them to be here. But let me quickly read you this statement from Seema, and then I'm going to turn it over to our panelists. Seema Ahmad, who is from the organization Michigan Muslim Democratic Caucus. She asked me to read this for you to hear. My 15-year-old volunteer, Abraham, was one day walking with his sister home from school when he was stopped by the local police. The police questioned why Abraham was walking home from school and harassed his sister, who was wearing a head covering, by trying to approach her physically. Abraham tried to stop the police from touching his sister, and was arrested. Abraham was acquitted later by the judge, but his experience rattled his sister and the Yemeni community very much. It tore down the trust between the police and the community. This is only the beginning. It will be worse with the passage of House Bill 4305. Immigration reform is the number one issue-based campaign that MMDC supports, and we urge everyone to join with and fight with AIR and AACP, OneHamtramck. It is not only a moral imperative, but also an economic necessity to join the fight. We need to protect our immigrants in order to preserve and grow our economy. MMDC holds the view of the Democratic Party that we need to allow immigrants to be able to fill the jobs for which they are needed. Most Republicans advocate a complete shutdown of the borders. MMDC supports AIR that this is not a feasible solution. Both high and low skilled labor still keeps the U.S. economy going. Whereas companies like Microsoft cannot survive without high skilled engineers, whereas immigrant doctors fill the dire needs of the U.S. population, likewise, low-skilled immigrants are too needed to fill hard-to-fill jobs. Jobs like apple and cherry picking, meat packing, hotel, and street cleaning, and other jobs like that. MMDC supports faster and more efficient visa processing and family unification, so it's easier to work in the U.S. legally. Our immigration policy must reflect the needs of the U.S. population. What's more important now is that MMDC opposes the HB 4305 bill, which will allow police the power to stop anyone based on their looks, like they did in Abraham's sister's case. The immigrant community is now facing what the African American community faced some decades ago and is still facing. The immigrant community needs to join them hand in hand to fight this discrimination. Enough talk. I call everyone to action to join AIR. When they text you with a request to make a phone call, make the call. When they call you to join a rally, go to the rally. When the NAACP asks you to come to a teaching, come to the teaching. Nothing happens without sacrifice. Sacrifice for the sake of your children. Sacrifice for the sake of humanity. So one day when we are asked by God Almighty if we did do anything about this, we will not be ashamed. This is from Seema Ahmad from the MMDC board. So this is exactly one more purpose of the event, to give a chance for the communities of color in this area to work together on a common issue. Issue of racial profiling, issue of immigrants' rights. So right now we're going to ask our panelists to speak, 5 to 10 minutes each. I don't have any particular order, and I know that Ryan is going to speak specifically about the House bill, so I don't know if we want to start with that first. And I asked Saaed if he would sort of give us an overview of the issue from a world perspective of what we've been talking about. So Dawud or Noel, if you're probably going to speak more specifically about the local issues and help with the legal issues of immigrants' rights in this Detroit area, specifically that area. Is that what you want to focus on? We didn't talk about this ahead of time.
We didn't talk about this
No.
ahead of time.
So we'll put you last so you can figure out what to say.
For Seema, it seems.
Right.
But,
Well, yes. No, we had you on the panel, but because we never could reach you and contact you, we were hoping you'd be on the panel. Okay. So we're going to put you last. I think I'd like to ask Dawud to come up first because he's been active more than anyone around these issues, and he doesn't want to go first. Okay.
Let Ryan go first.
Okay, Ryan's going to go first, and then after Ryan, we're going to ask Saaed to go, and Dawud, and then Noel, and then I'll come back in 40 minutes. See you. Thank you.
Okay. Well,
Bill, thank you so much for inviting me to talk. I really appreciate it. And thank you all for coming. Oh, assalamu alaikum. So there's a call and response to this, right? My name is Ryan Bates. I'm the director of the Alliance for Immigrants' Rights and Reform. We're a coalition of 50 different labor, faith, social service, and civil rights organizations working all across the state for immigration reform at the federal and state levels. Can folks hear me if I just yell? Or okay. And also to stand up for the civil rights of immigrant workers, families, and students. I first started thinking about this issue when I myself was a student and had the opportunity to work with fair trade coffee farmers in southern Mexico and also with farm workers in Adrian, Michigan. And I was always struck by the tremendous dignity of communities struggling for a bare modicum of social and economic justice, and the indignity of the fact that the social tools my family used to join the middle class, labor unions and public education, were either inaccessible or illegal for these communities that I'd come to care so much about. I remember one morning I was going to work with my friends in the camp in Adrian, and one of the mothers came to me and said, you know, and I was really excited about this. I was a young rabble-rouser, right? She said to me, you know, Ryan, we had an action, we organized, and we went to the boss and we demanded something. And I said to her, well, that's great, you know, what did you guys ask for? What did you want? Did you want higher pay? Did you want health care or better working conditions? And she said, no, you know, we demanded toilet paper. And it really struck me then that we live in two Americas. One America where folks like me get to go to college, get to live in safety, and another America where people have to organize to win basic toiletries for their families. So I made the decision that I didn't want to live in two Americas anymore. That I wanted to live in a country where those that basic level of social and economic justice was available to everybody, whether they grew up in Novi like me or working in a migrant camp. Those experiences springboarded my involvement in the immigrants' rights movement and social justice. And one of the issues we've been working on lately is House Bill 4305, which is a pattern off of Arizona's Senate Bill 1070, the Show Me Your Papers law. Really quickly, what this bill does, this has been introduced in Michigan by State Representative David Ajema from Granville, is that it would allow the police to stop, question, and arrest anyone whom they suspect of being undocumented or deportable. It would make it a state crime not to have your papers on you, and it would allow, this is the very interesting one, it would allow private citizens the right to sue police departments if they do not feel that this law is being enforced vigorously enough. And lastly, it prevents cities from limiting the degree to which police cooperate with immigration enforcement. So I'm going to drill down through this and what this really means kind of point by point, but that's the broad scope of what this bill does. Right now, the police need a good reason to stop you, right? They have to believe you're committing a crime, may have committed a crime, you look like a suspect of a crime. They need probable cause. So what this bill would do is it creates the probable cause that you look like you might be undocumented, right? So who looks undocumented? Any undocumented Canadians going to get pulled over as a result of this? I don't think so. So this is going to require crass racial profiling on the part of police to enforce this almost unenforceable law. Secondly, because of this provision that allows people to sue the police department if they don't feel that the law is being enforced vigorously enough, it doesn't just allow racial profiling, it actually requires it, right? If you're an angry, I don't want to assume anybody's political affiliations, but let's assume you're an angry Tea Party person, right? An angry Tea Partier. And you're sitting there angry at a group of immigrants working on the side of the road, and a police car rolls by and doesn't stop and check their papers. You can sue the police department. So to prevent themselves from being subjected to these kinds of lawsuits, what are police departments going to do? They're going to put in policy and practice of consistently harassing immigrant-appearing communities. And I say immigrant-appearing because we know many communities of color here, particularly in the Detroit area, are long-standing. The Latino community in Southwest Detroit has been here for 150 years, longer than my family from Poland and Lithuania. And a similar story for the Arab American community as well, not to mention the South Asian community and the long-standing African immigrant community. So this is a major civil rights problem. Now, the other thing it does is it limits sanctuary city policies. Detroit has a policy that says if you are stopped for a traffic violation, the police can't ask about your immigration status. This is a good thing. The Detroit police already have enough stuff to do, or some would say too much stuff to do, that they don't need to be spending their time trying to enforce immigration law. As Noel will point out, immigration law is incredibly complicated. And the police, their job is to keep the public safe, right? Go get the murderers and the thieves and the bad guys. If your house is being robbed on one side of town, do you really want the cops to be on the other side of town, busily checking the papers of everyone who looks like an immigrant? In fact, these sorts of policies make us all less safe. Secondly, there's an economic impact here. As Governor Snyder has said, immigrants are an economic driver in Michigan. Look at Hamtramck, look at Southwest Detroit, look at Dearborn, look at Canton or Troy or Sterling Heights. Communities that are thriving on the basis of immigrants, building businesses, raising families, paying mortgages, or in some cases, rebuilding whole neighborhoods, right? This is the role that immigrants have always played in our regional economy. But if we start treating people like potential criminals, rather than as valued members of our community who have something to participate, have something to contribute, they will stop coming. Now, if you're an international investor, or you're thinking about bringing a business here to Michigan, why would you come to a state that treats you as a suspect class? So this will actually end up killing jobs, not just for immigrants who will have a harder life, but for everybody else who would be employed in those businesses that and industries that immigrants contribute. Am I making sense so far?
Yeah.
No, shakes. So that's kind of narrowly about HB 4305. So, but the issue here isn't just one bill, right? This isn't one crazy person in the state legislature who's decided that he's going to go on a crusade against immigrants. This is a national strategy by the anti-immigrant movement. We're not talking about a couple crazy racists out in Holland. We're talking about a very well-organized, well-funded, professional movement of folks who are intentionally trying to shape our nation's political and social landscape to be hostile to immigrants, not just the undocumented. There's the stated policy of organizations like FAIR, not to be confused with CAIR or AIR, Federation for American Immigration Reform, Citizens Immigration Service, and FIRE, they all have the same acronym, is that they want a timeout on immigration, meaning they want to shut the border down. They want to end immigration. So though their rhetoric is about the undocumented, their policy goal is to stop new people coming If you look into the ideologies of their funders, it's about white supremacy. It's about the anxiety of the white majority that by 2050 they will no longer be a majority. What's the way to solve that? End immigration is their solution. So here in Michigan and also across the country, there are lots of other measures that are designed to criminalize immigrant communities and make life unlivable. So difficult that folks will up and deport themselves. Here in Michigan, there's a proposal to make it impossible to get married unless you have a green card or citizenship. A proposal that would require temporary staffing agencies to use the e-verification system, which has a 20% error rate for folks who were not born here, making it then impossible for them to get jobs. A proposal that would make it virtually impossible for the U.S. citizen children of undocumented parents to get food stamps. And lastly, a proposal that would eliminate all federal funding for public benefits to make sure that undocumented immigrants don't get any, right? So this isn't a political sideshow. We're literally talking about starving children, right? Compound this with the move to revise or eliminate the 14th Amendment, the part of the Constitution that creates birthright citizenship. These guys are going after the babies, right? So this is the level of organization and their strategy. Other portions of the bill in Arizona is SB 1070, and bills that are currently on the docket are about to pass in Georgia, Iowa, Idaho, and Oklahoma, make it illegal to, and some of these were recently defeated, but some were passed, transport or harbor undocumented immigrants as a private citizen, or provide material aid. So material aid, that sounds dangerous, right? What does that actually mean? It means if you give someone a ride to church or mosque on Sunday or Friday, as is depending upon your habit, and they don't have papers, you are guilty of transporting an illegal immigrant. If you give someone a glass of water or money for their lawyer or any other material aid, you become guilty of material aid. If you live with someone who's undocumented, let's say, for example, mom has papers and dad doesn't. There are lots of mixed status families. Mom becomes guilty of harboring an illegal immigrant. So we're not just talking about an attempt to go after the undocumented, right? We're talking about an attempt to criminalize whole communities and make their lives so difficult that they go home. This isn't about law and order, it's not about the budget, it's not about the economy. As Bill has pointed out, it is about racism. And it is about competing visions of America. Do we want to live in a country with basic respect for civil rights for everyone? Or do we want to live in a country where everyone who doesn't look like me is part of a suspect class? I want to put in one plug. If you want to get involved in our work combating the anti-immigrant movement, building the pro-immigrant movement, please fill out your supporter card. There's a lot of work to do, and we need your help to do it. And just the last piece is enforcement, right? We're in a fight right now with ICE, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, who are completely out of control in Detroit. Surrounding elementary schools and harassing parents, detaining them right outside the school in full view of children and parents dropping their children off for school, violence during enforcement, people being thrown through walls during raids, illegal warrantless searches without the consent of those involved, and the abuse of prisoners in detention, including pregnant women. So we've documented these cases. We're pursuing an investigation by Congress. But what really allows us to make the case that this isn't just one bad apple, one rogue agent, one guy who broke the rules, but a systemic problem that has to be addressed at the top. What allows us to make that case is people coming forward with their stories. So if you know someone who has been the victim of a home raid or a workplace raid without a warrant, if you know someone who was abused in detention, particularly denied medical treatment, if you know someone who's seen ICE or Border Patrol at a school, at a mosque, at a church, if you know someone who has been the victim of violence by ICE, please let us know so we can, one, help that family get the services and support they need, but two, make sure that story doesn't remain one person's tragedy, but becomes part of a national campaign for justice and accountability. With that, I'm sure I've exceeded my time. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a quick question for you about the bill, the House Bill 4305.
Yes.
Where is it in the city right now?
The bill is currently in the Judiciary Committee. It has not been scheduled for a vote. So we need 2 more votes on that committee to go our way, to be able to go to the chair and say there's no reason to bring this up because we have enough votes to defeat it. So if anyone, particularly one vote is one we need, Representative Heise. So if anyone knows anyone in Canton, Northville area, we need those folks to call our representative and say, we're opposed to House Bill 4305. Michigan is not the next Arizona.
Thank you. Now, our next panelist, if you'd like to speak from your seat where you're sitting, you can do that, or you can come up here and speak either way. The cameraman will follow you. So next, we'd like to welcome Dawud Walid.
Assalamu alaikum. Good evening. I will be brief up here. In regards to this House Bill 4305, which is basically a remix of a bill that was introduced last year by a state representative last year who ended up running for state senate in Macomb County. She ended up not making it, but she introduced a similar bill. As Ryan said, there's a greater ideology and a greater force behind just trying to protect our nation in terms of crime and from people here who are undocumented somehow causing a threat to national security or a threat to the state of Michigan. Let me also say that recently during the Muslim Capital Day, you had a gathering last month with a number of activists and organizations in which we met with Governor Snyder. And he stated at that time that if somehow 4305 was to be passed and came to his desk, that he would veto it. With that being said, we can't count on that. We can't count on that. So what I want to discuss right now, besides those 2 individuals that Ryan discussed in terms of the other votes that we need to go our way, is what is your job as far as getting the word out to the people within your circle of influence to raise their consciousness level, to contact their state reps and state senators? I use this analogy a lot from my African American experience. And as important it is for minority groups to organize, it is as important, or maybe even more important, for people from the majority or for the status quo to work on this issue with others and to reach out to people in their circle of influence to raise consciousness level, to stop these types of bills and to address the broader agenda of racism and xenophobia and Islamophobia that's at play as well. You know, during the movement, the abolitionist movement in the 19th century, there were a number of great African American abolitionists like Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Sojourner Truth, African Americans. Well, actually, they didn't even, some didn't have citizenship. People of African descent who fought for the abolition of black people at the time were considered 3/5, you know, in regards to electoral votes and taxation, who were slaves, the chattel of the of Southern slave masters. And I always say that with the work that they did and other great individuals like them, if it wasn't for good white Christians who were in the status quo to help fight and lobby towards abolishing slavery, I might be picking cotton and sugarcane to this day. There always has to be a mass or a group that has moral conscience within the status quo that can challenge the status quo, because the voice of the minority is not respected as much and is marginalized by those who are comfortable within the status quo. So those of you who, Judeo-Christian white Americans, you have a responsibility in rising up in terms of dealing with this situation, because we do know that there are individuals who immigrate here from Europe who fall out of status, who come here legally. They come here legally, fly here legally, just like from the Middle East, South Asia. People are flying here, they're here, they have visas, they're entering legally, and for whatever reason, sometimes people fall out of status for various reasons. We know there are people from Russia and from Ireland who fall out of status. When we're talking about ICE raids on the national perspective, or if we're talking about how this bill would impact in terms of state police or with police departments like in Warren, Michigan, or God forbid, Brighton or Howe, right? We know who the police are going to be pulling and asking to produce citizenship. And even those people who are born here could be detained if perhaps they can't show that they're citizens or have their birth certificate. And I'll give you an example of this, and then I will sit down. Around town 9/11, I used to live in southwest Detroit, on the border of Dearborn. I hadn't been married very long. And we were riding, I was in the passenger seat, and instead of stopping all the way, my wife just yielded. She didn't stop all the way. So the police pull us, and they look over, the officer came and said, hey, so you can stop all the way. You just yielded, you can stop all the way. Let me see your license or registration. So now I'm sitting in the passenger seat. So then the African-American police officer looks over at me. I had on a regular button-up shirt and some slacks. I had on this hat right here, kufi. He stops the conversation, looks over at me, and says, who is Habib looking at? Talking to her like I didn't know English. I was born in Hudson Hospital. My family's been in America about 300 years. He said, who is Habib? And she looked at him. I just looked at him. I didn't say anything. Who's Habib? He said, so make me have to pull Habib and take him in. I actually gave this testimony in front of the Detroit City Council when Congressman Cockrell put forth the anti-profiling legislation here in Detroit that Ryan was discussing. I told this story in front of the Detroit City Council. And so she was like, well, I don't know. Maybe you should ask him. But if that law, House Bill 4305, was in effect, I'm sitting in the passenger seat. I'm not far away from the apartment I was staying in. The reason why I wasn't driving to begin with was I had forgotten my ID. and house my driver's license, I could have been, if that was in effect back in that time, I could have been pulled in and hauled in by the Detroit Police Department, maybe turned over to ICE. So I'm just saying that's the reality and how this type of bill can not only affect people who are undocumented or documented immigrants, even people who are born here in the United States of America could suffer through profiling and harassment if this type of bill ends up being passed and signed. I'm going to sit down now, thank you. And excuse me too if I have to excuse myself at 8:30, so if the conversation's going and you see me having to go, it's not out of disrespect, but I have to go in somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawud. And yes, we have prayers coming up in about a half an hour, so we're going to try to give a chance to our panelists, Saaed and Noel, to speak, and then we're going to open the floor up to our Muslim friends who have to leave first. So next, we're very excited to have with us Saaed Kahn from Wayne State University. Let's welcome Saaed.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you to the Hamtramck NAACP. Assalamu alaikum, and peace unto all of you. Good evening. I thought I'd provide a little bit of a historical background on the issue of immigration. So please forgive me, this is one of the burdens of being a historian at Wayne State. The American myth, and I'd like to call it the myth because sometimes it doesn't really jive with the reality of this country, is that we are a nation of immigrants, which I suppose we are. But American history is really more about the treatment of those immigrant groups over not just the last 236 years, but dating well before the actual founding of this country. And sometimes people like to group who are the immigrants to the United States, and they do so by ethnic or by racial terms or even by continent. And I'd like to submit that there's really 4 groups of immigrants that have come to the United States. Voluntary, involuntary, documented, and undocumented. But the most important thing to recognize about all 4 of these groups is that they have all contributed to this country. One cannot claim or privilege one group over another in those accomplishments. And there's been various points in the history of this country which tend to get glossed over now. I think America is a country that has a very short attention span and definitely a short memory. And we like to gloss over those issues which tend to be thorny and maybe confuse those who like to have a romantic view. It's like today's royal wedding. If there was one mistake that was made, people will gladly go ahead and gloss over that, like the trouble that Prince William had in getting the ring on Kate's finger. I got up early, I couldn't help it. I spent the first 8 years of my life in England, so I was almost forced to watch it. But if you look at the Native Americans, if you look at the treatment of the slaves, if you look even at the turn of the 20th century and something which began even earlier than that during the Civil War, the whole nativist movement. And for those of you who've seen the movie Gangs of New York, it shows this excellent portrayal of how it seems so strange for some people that it's white people who are prejudiced against other white people. But that is part of American history, that those who came before became prejudiced and racist toward those who came after them. Before 1882, the railroads and much of the West was built on the backs and by the blood of Chinese. And because too many of them weren't getting the hint to go back themselves, which everyone thought they should, and they decided to stay here because they had developed families and opportunities, the Chinese Exclusion Act was passed in 1882. And very stiff quotas were placed on some immigration from some parts of the world for several decades. In fact, it took about 80 years before those quotas were finally brought down. Many of you are familiar with the Civil Rights Act and the work that organizations like the NAACP and countless others, nameless, faceless others, did in order to achieve the Civil Rights Act. But what many of you may not realize is that for you who are in Hamtramck from more recent immigrant communities, like from Bangladesh and from Yemen, you may not have migrated to this country in 1965, but the debt of gratitude you owe is exactly from those who brought about the Civil Rights Act. Because when the Civil Rights Act was passed, then and only then were many of the quotas relaxed, which then allowed for immigration from South Asia, from Southeast Asia, and from Africa to increase. So there's definitely that connection between the quotas and the Civil Rights Act. One of the nice, I suppose, and reassuring and comforting parts of all of this rather unpleasant talk about anti-immigration is that you're not alone. The connection between anti-immigrant movements and racism is something that has been visited on so many other communities here. Ones who have fortunately been able to, in a very slow and painful process, move beyond that kind of racism in some fashion. Jews, Irish, Italians, many of those groups which today one would not even distinguish as being non-white were considered to be non-white at certain points in American history. Access to employment, access to education, access to social spaces like country clubs and golf courses were all restricted. It was not simply just a matter of African Americans who were denied access, but it was Jews and Irish and Italians and others. There would be signs that would say, no coloreds, no Jews in this park. And on many college campuses until the 1960s, either by explicit or even under the table kind of wink wink nudge nudge rules, many Jews were not even allowed to be on the faculty. And we find that it took a long time for these things to change. Well, why is this happening again? One would always think that America should move beyond some of its darker periods, and there's no pun intended with that. It's a perfect storm right now. The fact that America is facing a time of economic uncertainty, the fact that people are seeing that its position as the sole superpower is now moving quite naturally by the rise of other powers in the world, and so now the playing field is starting to level out. And also that there's this realization that America is on an irreversible track to no longer be as white, as Ryan was discussing, by 2050, moving toward being a browner nation. That, epitomized by the election of an African American president, is a little bit too much for many people to stomach. And mentioning the president, it also shows that there's no immunity from racism. The President of the United States, somebody who one could think is above and beyond any kinds of aspersions of racism, gets it every single day. Most times, though, people are either too cowardly to confront what really is in their stomach or in their heart to call him. So instead of calling him the N-word, they've resorted to calling him the M-word, Muslim, which, of course, people can do with no real recriminations, and in fact, they can pick up some votes and some ratings points on their TV shows, Donald Trump, in the process. The president's own professor, or one of his colleagues at Harvard, or one of his mentors, Henry Louis Gates, was arrested 2 years ago while trying to, get this, break into his own house, okay? Because he happened to be an African-American man in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and didn't have his key. So we find that if you think that this is about class, or if you think that this is about wealth, it really, really isn't. It is not about the green money, it is about the color of the skin. And I was very much struck by what Ryan mentioned when he said two Americas. We do have two Americas. And one of those Americas lives in the shadows of the other. And House bills like that which is proposed in Michigan, that which is passing in other parts of the country, that which is already passed in Arizona, but fortunately has some suspension to it, is simply going to force more people into those shadows where they're going to be fearful of getting out of them and try to nudge them out of the United States. In fact, in 1968, when George Wallace ran for the presidency, he was going to be very kind by his pledge to reunite African Americans with Africa. Fortunately, he wasn't elected, but then again, Nixon was. The idea of showing your papers, like show me the money, what's interesting is that in 1989, that practice ended in so many parts of the world. In fact, we were protesting against those regimes which had laws or which had such a society where you had to show your papers everywhere you go. I long for those days again, 22 years ago, when it was we who actually didn't have the problem with the papers, and now that is something that is happening there. And the idea that there are so many in this country who truly believe in this myth of returning to the original understanding of the Constitution, where so many of us in this room would be relegated back to that status of being only 60% of a human being, is really troublesome. And if it is a matter of offering suggestions, and if it is a matter of offering solutions to you tonight, because I think that's really why we're here, if I could provide a humble recommendation, I think the time has come now for we as communities to stop focusing and obsessing on what is happening overseas. In doing so, we have neglected what is happening at home. The fact that many of my students were so active and ecstatic about what was happening in Yemen and Tunisia and Libya and Bahrain and Egypt, to the point where they were skipping class to demonstrate every single day, without realizing that the problems that are facing them back here, when it comes to the kinds of profiling, when it comes to the erosion of their rights, when it comes to the fact that a man can come up here from Florida and instigate a riot in front of Dearborn City Hall, seems to be a more critical need than what's happening in Dhaka or Sana'a or Cairo or Bahrain or Benghazi. It's a matter of perspective, it's a matter of priority. That is not to say that one should be ignorant to or neglectful of what is happening elsewhere in the world, and it is certainly not a call for one not to be empathetic for what's happening in the rest of the world. But as the Prophet ﷺ said in one of his hadith, before you do anything else, you have to tie your camel. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you, Saaed. So our original plan of having the panelists discuss between themselves, we're going to do as we have our open discussion with everybody. But one more speaker from our panel, our good friend, a Palestinian activist who knows all about how borders and racism and that sort of thing can happen in a country, struggled all his life to liberate Palestine from occupation from Israel. He's an immigration attorney, a good friend, and we thank him so much for being here. Noel, Saleh.
Thank you. Bill, and thank you, the other panelists. I don't know how I can add to the discussion that has already been presented to us this evening. But I want to put in my 2 cents worth, and then I really, hopefully, then we can have a dialogue and some questions. I'm here this evening. Bill gave me some historical background in terms of work with the Palestinian issue. But I'm here this evening really as part of Access, the Arab Community Center for Economic and Social Services. And I mention that because I think that Access serves as a model of why we're here this evening. And that is that it's an institution that grew up on a need of an immigrant community and has grown to an institution that now represents a certain amount of political power in the United States, where representatives, elected officials come to Access looking for endorsements, and that members of Access are able to use some political influence and affect some change on issues that are important to us as Arab Americans, as immigrants, and just as Americans in general. Now, I'm saying this not to tout access per se, but I'm saying it to sort of focus on why are we here this evening, and that is, what is it that we can do to address the problems that are facing our community? You don't need one more person to come up here and tell you horror stories of how your community, how the Yemeni, the Bengali community in Hamtramck face problems with elections, where where poll watchers and the U.S. government had to come in to make certain that you were allowed to exercise your right to vote. We don't need to have another story about what the police can do, because we know what the police already do. We don't need to know about what ICE, the former immigration, can do, because we know what they do. We know what they do. They profile, they make the assumptions that Dawud talked about. They make, they make arrests and detentions, and they have more power than the police, because they don't need probable cause. They say we're a floating border, because we're within 50 miles of an international border. We have the right to ask anybody for their identification. It's not just at the bus station and the airport and the train station. It's at any street inside within 25 miles or 50 miles of an international border. And they do that. So there was a story not too long ago about a young Mexican-American man who was an engineer for the Detroit public school system. Third-generation Mexican-American. But as he told his story, he says, I wear a cowboy hat, I've got long black hair, and I drive a pickup truck. And he was pulled over, not by the Detroit police, he was pulled over by ICE. And they said, well, we're pulling you over because we can't read your license plate. Well, but you're not a Detroit policeman. Well, yeah, but I want to see your papers. He says, well, here's my paper, here's my driver's license, here's my registration, here's my... He says, no, I want to see your papers. I want to see that you're a citizen. He said, well, hey, I'm third generation. I'm a citizen. I don't have any papers. Do you got papers on you showing you're a citizen? He said, well, according to our records, you had a work permit that expired 3 years ago. He says, well, what records do you have of me, that you pulled me over? He says, the truck's registered in my name. I'm a U.S. citizen. You're lying. That resulted in 3 more ICE cars coming around, 6 officers detaining this U.S. citizen on the side of the John Lodge Expressway for over 4 hours. Now, it's not enough that, like the story that, Seema had mentioned in her letter, it's not enough that he's going to be able to sue these officers and collect some money, and he will. It's not enough because, what we need to be working against is that kind of event cannot happen. And so this House Bill 3905 it may not pass. But as Ryan very clearly told us, they don't care it'd be nice if it passed, but that's not the important issue. The important issue for those who are purveyors of this despicable piece of legislation is that it gets their story out. It creates that climate that authorizes ICE agents to act as they do, that authorizes police officers to act as they sometimes do, that authorizes poll attendants to deny you your right to vote. It's the atmosphere that they present. And the only way to contest that is to educate ourselves as we're doing this evening and to activate ourselves. It's not enough that we educate ourselves and sit at the coffee house and talk about how bad it is. We have to energize ourselves, become involved, whether it's with CAIR or the NAACP or AIR or within your mosque, and have the mosque become engaged in the political activities of the community that you're living in. As Dr. Kahn said, we are living in America. And this is the place where we have to make our political power felt. And once we're capable of exercising that political power, then the America that we dream about may become a reality. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Noel. Okay, we're going to open the floor just a little while here so that our guests who have to leave early can ask any questions or make a comment to any of our panelists. Thank you to the panelists very much for your comments. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Anyone who has to leave soon, we'd like to give the mic to you so you can ask a question if you'd like to. Anyone?
Oh.
Okay.
Good evening. I'm John Posner. I work with Noel, but I do criminal defense work for close to 40 years. Close to 40 years in the Tri-County area here, particularly Wayne County. Ryan, what you were saying in terms of the House Bill 4205, Noel and I talked about it, we'll get all the nails on the head. In fact, what Ryan was saying in the handout is real important, what we can and should do. It is even written poorly. It's not probable cause, there has to be reasonable suspicion to make a stop. There's been a good U.S. Supreme Court case, Padilla versus Kentucky, which gives us some standing in terms of the federal legislation, and also Terry versus Ohio. And those are case law in terms of when the state conflicts with, if you will, the federal law. And I think that's part of the problem Arizona legislation is having right now. So we have some fallbacks. But more importantly, it's the political. And I think that what you said is 110% correct. I mean, we have to approach people. Anyone can do anything to make sure this does not take place. What Dawud was saying is completely correct. That stop that he was talking about is really a civil infraction, failure to yield, okay? Stop sign, red light, left turn, bad equipment. Those are civil infractions. They aren't even criminal. They aren't even criminal. And there he is, under suspicion as a passenger. So these are cases, when was that, 15 years ago, 10 years ago?
Shortly after 9/11.
And here we are, same thing going on. If I tell you all the cases we have, I went into Noel's office today before I even decided to come here, what ICE is doing. I have a case involving some Southwest Detroiters, and before I could even get it even close to discussion stage, ICE is already calling the Wayne County prosecutors, and I think there's pressure. Is that the right word, Noel? That they're absolutely putting pressure on the case. So I think these are times that are very difficult for all of us. Stay in touch. Appreciate everyone being here, and I think we have to be proactive.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your remarks. Okay, anybody else like to speak?
Saaed, when you were talking, you said this was not economic, what was going on. And, you know, as everybody was talking, I've been involved in a lot of different areas of the city, you know, in peace and justice. And in every area, there's 3 million people that are unemployed, there's an increase in homelessness, there's the whole illegal mortgage problem. And I'm thinking of Germany in 1930s. And it's so much like that, you know, and you know, I wonder what would have happened in Germany if Hitler would have stayed in power and then all the Jews were dead and the gypsies were dead and the homosexuals were dead. Who would do the work? And I wonder, they're trying to kill off or get rid of the whole working class to keep the money in that 1%, and they're not thinking clearly. I mean, there's not going to be anyone to do the work, but it's crazy. I mean, it's just so crazy that we're in this experience now, and I think it's very economic. There's less resources in the world, especially in the Americas, and they're thinking, well, what I have to have the most. I don't want to lose my pool, my house, my maid, and whatever. And I think that's the Tea Party kind of thinking. And so what's going on here is so much indicative of what's going on everywhere. Okay, so then the point is, how do we work on this? I guess it's 2 tiers. We work on it knowing that all this is going on a macro level, and we need to work on a macro level, but we also need to work on a micro level, like getting very involved in immigration at the same time.
Thank you. First of all, let me just go ahead and just clarify. I didn't mean to imply that economics didn't matter. In fact, I was saying that economics doesn't provide you immunity from racism. That even if you're a tenured Harvard professor or you're a president of the United States, it doesn't keep you away from getting targeted, shall we say, for that. Because sometimes I think it's this idea that all this would take is more money. If I earn more money, then I would be in a safer zone. And I think 9/11 for a lot of Muslims, if there was one nice thing that happened about 9/11, is it totally got rid of that myth. But I'm a little bit skittish about making the comparison to Weimar Germany, and it comes up a lot. Just because, as a historian, it's difficult to compare situations. I mean, we didn't lose a war a few years ago. We didn't have nearly the kind of economic collapse that Germany did. But there is still a group of people who feel a kind of moral panic, and that is very much the same. Another way that there's similarities, and again, these are just sort of little similarities. I'm always struck when I see the fact that in Hollywood, people with a baby bump are considered to be something good. And now it doesn't matter if the baby bump is through marriage or not. Or this family that always makes it onto People magazine, I think they're up to their 21st kid or something like that. They've got a family of 21 or 22 children, and they're seen to be this wonderful family. So basically what it's showing is that it's showing white America that fertility is a good thing. And the reason being, in order to then serve as a counterpoint to who really is having the babies, especially in Europe, which is mostly the non-Europeans, and most of them are Muslims, which is what the fear is over there. But I think that your point about how to help is so vitally important. And again, it requires people to focus on what's happening domestically and, more importantly, what's happening locally. As I mentioned, I mean, we have to take our focus off the world news when it comes to these important things and look at what's happening locally. And even within the United States, keep the eye on what's happening in Arizona and Oklahoma and other places, but it's about this area first and foremost. Work on the community level, but also look at who else is already doing the work. There's not the need to have, there's a saying in Pakistan that everyone shouldn't have 1.5-inch mosques. Masjid is what it's called. It does no good to have all of these little ones set up when you can pool the resources together. We mentioned about the great abolitionists and the great people from the non-African American community who were working. I also think about in 1962 that it was Schwerner and Goodman who joined Cheney in trying to mobilize the black vote in Mississippi, and all 3 of them were killed. In that sense, there was no discrimination on white or black. It was the fact that all 3, 2 whites and 1 black, were trying to get out the black vote. So this idea of joining forces is absolutely critical, as Noel said.
Thank you, Saaed. I don't want to push you or rush you here, but we are getting close to prayer time, and I just want to give Gamal Rahman a moment here to say something in Bangladesh, Bangla. And he's our former president of the NAACP here in Hamtramck. He has something.
Thank you, Bill. In 1993, when we were moving this mosque from a small house to a larger place, one of the members said that during the Bosnian crisis, and he said, we live in a comfortable world that we don't realize that it's going to change overnight. It can change overnight without us realizing it. And he was so right about it that, at that time no one believed him. Because, it was a good time. I mean, Clinton was in power and the economy was doing good. Now we are beginning to see the relationship between economics and then people's attitudes. Resources are limited, and we see the races are moving from Scandinavian nations towards the Europe and then in America now. And you are absolutely right that 1930s, if they prevailed, what would have happened today? Well, what we are seeing now is that force is rising up from the ashes. And unless we are prepared for this is going to happen again, and in this country. And ask about any African American about loss of civil rights that supported by the government. When that happens, we know the stories in 1954, I believe, in Emmett Till situation, that they did not know, they believed that they will not be prosecuted, that they did not get prosecuted. The 3 people that killed him, because he had a relationship or supposed relationship with a white girl. Well, now the laws are being written in a way that, the police will be given rights to ask you about your citizenship. Like this gentleman was mentioning that, 3rd generation immigrant, and he was being detained for 4 hours. And we should not be living in a comfortable world, and we need all kind of help and assistance, like the other one was mentioning, that there is no minority or majority in this case. Everyone will suffer. So we have to be very alert. I don't see, most of the Bangladeshi people have left for prayer, but I'll just translate it a little bit. House একটা bill আসছে, HR 305. এটা আইস যে ইমিগ্রেশন ডিপার্টমেন্টকে এত অধিকার দিবে যে পুলিশ যদি আপনাকে থামায় সন্দেহবশত, তবে আপনার কাগজ চেক করতে পারবে, চ্যালেঞ্জ করতে পারবে, মানে আপনার কোনো অধিকার, মানে সব অধিকারে চলে যায় এটা দিয়ে। অনেক জিনিস আছে, আমরা ইন্টারনালি আরো আলোচনা করা দরকার মসজিদ থেকে। তবে এইটা যদি হয় তাইলে মানে আমাদের অধিকার, সব ইমিগ্রেশন অধিকার, সব ধরনের অধিকার থেকে বঞ্চিত হবে। And also, if this bill passes, this one actually helps the criminals. What happens is, if somebody is raped or tortured or some crime committed against someone, even someone legal will not be going to police department because of being, the harassment and everything. It's not easy to deal with police department being a 1st generation immigrant or 2nd generation, especially if you're an immigrant. And think about it, when you have the fear of being caught in the middle of all this mess, it's not going to be very easy. So the criminals will take advantage of that. And then they will. So this is actually, who are they helping? The immigrants or citizens as a whole. There is no immigrant or non-immigrant. Everybody is immigrant here. And unless there is the Red Indian or Native American here, everyone is immigrant. I don't care, 3rd generation or 10th generation, everyone is immigrant. And everyone contributed to the economy, prosperity of this country. So everyone owes to that. So we should not be helping our criminals. Let's, put our forces together to help this country and ourselves. I mean, those who came here with their dream, they are realizing their dreams. And we talked about last week, there was a meeting, we talked about how Conant Avenue came to life, and then how Joseph Campo is dying. Because Conant Avenue and part of Joseph Campo, the ethnic restaurants and businesses, they're prospering. They're keeping these streets alive. And the people are coming from all other areas. I mean, it's not just the immigrants. People are coming here to have good time and good fun, food, everything. Conant Avenue, just go beyond Davison Avenue, and then you see what Conant Avenue looks like without the immigration present. So, let's not just talk about how immigrants are hurting the economy. Also look at the other side, how they're contributing to the economy and then resources that are available. and the fear should not rule our lives. I mean, cooperation and commitment to make things happen. That should be the case.
Thank you, Kamal. Ms. Fuller? Yeah, Ms. Fuller. Thank you very much, Kamal.
Just short, but the notion is that the notion is insurance. Like brother Saaed, he was explaining about the economy. I was talking about. So, like as per the explanation I learned to my knowledge, that is, I should be judged by my color, not by my character. And other thing is also, in a country, if I am bad person living in the like a big city, nice city, like a Troy and other, I should be judged differently, right, Mr. Saaed? Or I should, because if I'm living here in this city, Hamtramck or Detroit, I should be paid higher insurance, higher everything because of my economical condition, right? So this question always bothering me. In a country I'm living, but how come if I am living in the Bloomfield or some other, yeah, doesn't matter what character I have, but I should be treated well. So that's the thing. Please explain it. Is why these things. This question bothering me a long time.
Yeah, and I can appreciate that question. You know, clearly there is a this is you know, there's different kinds of racism. There is the kind of racism which is just out there in the open, where somebody will tell you to your face, this is why I don't like you, or they will say certain racial slurs to you. And then there is the racism which comes packaged in a nice candy coating, which doesn't seem to be as dangerous because it's put as something else, and it's oftentimes put into words like high risk, or they'll quote statistics, or any number of other things, but behind it really is a matter of race. I mean, you'll hear people talk about people, and you know exactly what they mean. I'll give you an example. I had a conversation with somebody who didn't want to use the word Arab, and they didn't want to use the word Jew. So they thought that they would be clever, and they would show that they weren't racist by saying people from Dearborn and people from West Bloomfield. This is how they were talking. The whole time they're sitting here because they wanted to persuade me that they weren't racist, but that I knew what they meant by who lives in Dearborn and who lives in West Bloomfield. So, you know, this is part of psychology as well. I mean, I'll give you an example even from my students when it comes to Bangladeshi students. And I'm fascinated by seeing this. I'll see the Bangladeshi students when sometimes they separate themselves from each other. And they'll say, oh, he's from Dhaka and he's from Saleh. Okay. In my classroom, I mean, in a college classroom, they make these distinctions. I mean, I would have thought, oh, you're all Bangladeshi, right? No. Oh, I'm a city person and they're the village people. Not the village people like the group. But this is part of human nature. The main thing, though, that we're here to talk about, though, is that you don't have to tolerate that. And no matter how much, or maybe to put it another way, how little money you have, the one thing you've got is the vote. They can go ahead and spend millions and millions and millions of dollars telling me who to vote for and who not to vote for in the election. I'm going to vote for who I want. You see, that's something that they can't take away from you. They're going to try to discourage you from doing it, but they can't take it away from you. So one of the other things that happens is people only get excited every 4 years. They figure, well, the only election that really matters is for the White House. The elections that really matter are for your city council, and I know that in Hamtramck you're very well mobilized and active about that. But it comes down to who's running for the school board, who is running for the city council. I just came from someplace and they were talking about how they want to get certain books on Islam off the shelves in the Bloomfield Library because they're so anti-Islam. And I said, well, have you ever thought about looking at who's on the city council of Birmingham? And they asked, what do you mean? I said, that's how you make the difference. You're not going to make any difference standing out there with a sign. You hit them where it hurts, and where it hurts is in the voting booth.
Yes, Gamal. Before Gamal speaks, I want to mention that Gamal was one of the leaders of the recent Yemeni rally in Veterans Park. Yes, and he's an activist from Yemen.
Thank you so much. First of all, I want to thank you, all of you to coming, and special thank for Mr. Meyer who made this event. Yes, I want to. I think as brother said is there is some people have problem in their mind everywhere, even in the Arabic country or Islamic country or all the way. The problem here, I think this window, this bill is gonna open official window for the profession, the racial profiling, and I don't know is our representative stupid as this way to follow the same trick which happened in for the Arizona law, and my question is gonna be for Brother Saaed as professor in the law, how the Michigan State representative they gonna work in this bill, and they don't see what happened for the bill what's they have passed in Arizona. I have read here in the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit uphold the lower court ruling that the whole case for provision of the Arizona law. They block the law what's happened then. How they don't have nothing to do just unless work in this case.
Yeah. Well, here's the deal. First of all, I mean, the way that the court system is set up in America, in the federal system, Arizona falls within the Ninth Circuit in the federal system. We are in the Sixth Circuit. Now, it's part of the federal system that if one circuit says one thing, the other circuits aren't obligated to follow that. What will eventually happen is if there is enough circuits that aren't on the same page, there's a few circuits, like say the Ninth Circuit, the 10th Circuit, the 12th Circuit, that say one way, and the Sixth Circuit, the Second Circuit, the Third Circuit say the other way, then the case is usually taken to the Supreme Court in order to have one standard law. But that's the reason why Michigan is not obligated to follow what the Ninth Circuit. The other thing is that the state legislature is always going to be more arrogant. They're going to say, well, Arizona didn't do it right, but we can do it right. And so that's what they're going to be arguing, that they can make a better bill. And this is the same thing that's happening with the Sharia cases in Oklahoma and all. Everyone wants to make a more airtight case of why Sharia should be banned. So that's the way that the court system goes. But where you influence that is, like Ryan said, you influence the people who are sitting on the Judiciary Committee, or you influence the people that are on the state legislature. Canton, it would be absolutely criminal for Canton's representative to vote for this bill. There are so many, not just Muslims, but so many other non-white people who live in Canton who are going to be affected. What that's going to require is for MCWS, the Muslim community of Western Suburbs, to make coalitions with the Hindu temples, with the Jewish temple there, with any of the groups that they can get, in order to then contact the state representative to say, if you don't do this, you're going to be out of a job in a year and a half. You see? That's the way that it can be done. It's nice to always think that we can rely on the judicial system, but I'm not sure how much faith I've got in those 9 people in the Supreme Court.
And to add to that, even if you can't vote, because you've recently emigrated, you can still volunteer, right? You can still register voters on your block and educate people. So part of the work we do through the Alliance for Immigrants' Rights is to make sure that whether you're a citizen, whether you've got papers or not, that you can be involved in the process of how laws are made that are going to affect your life in your community. Very glad that Hamtramck has a vibrant civic culture, and that lots of people are participating. And we'd like to see that spread to other communities in the
Anybody else would like to speak, please? I'll get a mic out to you. This is mic still working. Yeah, put a new battery in. I think it works now. This is Frank Hammer.
Hi, retired auto worker, and I just want to make a couple of comments about the discussion, which I think has been very good. I've certainly received an education tonight by both the description of the bill and the description of the experiences, and I think this is very important that this get as much exposure as possible. I wanted to make two comments. One is in regard to this gentleman's remark about the difference between Hamtramck and Bloomfield Hills or Troy or so on. And what I wanted to say in response to your remarks is that what you meant to say when you talked about that even an African American who was a president is subject to racism is that racism knows no bounds. But I think that the gentleman's point here was, but it has a class character as well. And we have to understand that those in the community who are poorer experience many manifestations of their racism that is important to recognize. So I thought, and then the other question that was discussed here had to do with the sort of almost like a knee-jerk comparison with the experiences of Nazi Germany in the 30s. And it can be very glib, it can be very, just a slight comment. But I would like to suggest that we actually entertain that comparison very seriously and not be distracted by differences between the two experiences. The Pastor Niemöller's quote, who was a Catholic himself and who thought that he would be free of the criminality of the Nazi regime, said, first they came for the communists, and I was not a communist, and I let it go. Then they came after the trade unionists, and I did the same. Then they came after the Jews, and then finally they came after me, and there was nobody left to help me. And I would put forward here that the biggest difference between the United States and Germany is that the United States has had a very strong democratic tradition that the fascist right-wing movement has been working against for a very long time. So that things here in the United States will not develop quite as quickly as they did in Germany. But I would point to you that back in the 1950s, they had destroyed the communist movement in this country, for which the left has suffered for many years since. And now, in the last 30 years, and especially escalating now, we see our unions under assault like we have never seen before. So that I think that the patterns are very similar. It's just taking a whole lot longer here in the United States than it did in Germany.
Okay, thank you. First of all, for the first point, you're absolutely right, and thank you for embellishing that class is a very important component. Regarding the comment about Weimar, the reason why I wasn't trying to be glib or be dismissive of it, but I think that it becomes too easy to collapse the narrative into that. One of the things that I would also offer that is a big difference between Germany and America, and I started off my remarks by saying that America was founded on a myth, and in a sense that's perhaps its one saving grace. The fact that America was not founded upon a particular race, ethnicity, language, etc. These things have sort of been tacked on later, gives us the optimism that they can be removed as well. You know, the pieces are a little bit more squishy. One of the big things that I think that hasn't been talked about, that I think is important to talk about, is that both the left and the right in this country that are now represented by two parties have both bought into this larger party of consumerism. It's all a gain for profit. And both of the political parties have really understood that the biggest game in town, the one that gives you the biggest bang for the buck of profit, is fear. Fear has become the biggest commodity. I mean, it's bigger than Walmart. And the way that people are able to cash in on this is just astounding. And you can get rid of the Muslims. That's fine. I mean, it's kind of like what they were talking about in Germany, or you were saying about who's going to do all the work. I guarantee you that the scanners and all of the surveillance equipment and all will not go away. The reason is that somebody is making an awful lot of money off every time this goes up. Right now, the big diversion is beating up on oil speculators who deserve to be beaten up. I should say that, but I mean, they deserve to be criticized. I don't want to be sounding like I'm advocating violence, especially since it's being taped. But the real speculators are the ones who are speculating on fear, because that's what's causing budgets to change. I think it's what flew completely under the radar after all the birth certificate nonsense, the Trump nonsense, Terry Jones locally, and of course the royal wedding, was the fact that now we have a 4-star general as a director of CIA, and we have a former director of CIA as the head of the Pentagon. Now, that's pretty scary stuff. But again, the fact that the country shrugs its shoulders there, but has a bout of epilepsy when it comes to the birth certificate, I think we have seen the enemy of ourselves, and it is we.
All right, we're rounding out the evening discussion, so if anybody has questions or closing remarks that you didn't get to say something, please let me know so you can talk, because we want everybody to have a chance, okay? I just want to say, anybody at the panel would like to say some closing remarks?
Yes, just one question.
Come on.
Sorry, one question. Now, as in the best or the obstruction for this event, what's the citizen people they should do?
Sure. We're asking folks to call Governor Snyder. We have one of these. There's an 800 number we've set up. And anyone can call that number regardless of your immigration status. And also contact your local representatives. That's step one, right? Step one is, just raise your voice and be loud. Fill out your supporter cards. And we're building organizing committees in different areas of the city and different parts of town. So it's important that people, do the minimum, right? The minimum is making a phone call. The next step is, let's have a deep conversation in this neighborhood and the mosque about what does change look like? What does immigration reform and organizing for immigrants' rights look like in Hamtramck, and what can we accomplish together? AIR has organizing meetings every other Wednesday at Access, our landlord. And we're trying to make sure that as many folks as possible can come. So if you fill out a card, we'll make sure you can come. Thanks, everybody.
All right, we'd like to thank our panelists for joining us this evening. Thank you so much to Dawud, Walid, Saaed, Kahn, Ryan Bates, from Noel, Saleh, and Gamal Alturki. Thank you to you for joining us. I want to say one last remark, however. We didn't get a big turnout tonight. It's because nobody's really being arrested in Hamtramck at this point, but this is why we're trying to warn people of the opposing possibility might happen. America has one of the largest prison populations in the world. There are immigrants are being picked up and taken out of the country daily. That's one way of stopping people from voting. And we got to stop this. And the only way to do it is to get out and act together. And we appreciate you folks for coming out and doing what has to be done. Thank you.